Joining us now, without further ado, Matt Waters. He's running as the Libertarian candidate for U.S. Senate in Virginia. Matt, welcome.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, Matt, what on earth ever got you into this mess?
Well, that's a great question. My wife asks me that it's becoming a daily basis now. Well, I would say this. I'd say a couple things. One, our friends in the Republican Party who used to be for balanced budgets and were opposing debt ceiling increases under President Barack Obama have thrown all that out the window under President Trump. The words balanced budget are as absent from a Republican as they've been from the Democrat Party over the last 70 years. And we have a debt that's at $22 trillion and increasing at $1 million a minute. And that is, according to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the greatest existential threat to the future of the Republic, John. And someone's got to talk about it.
Well, we're not talking about the debt. I mean, you're right about that, and we're not talking about it because, well, we just keep spending money, and the economy is going great. And I think the president's position is, look, we got to get the economy booming, and if we can do that, the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to grow ourselves into debt reduction by adding jobs and adding new businesses and adding new companies, and then people continue to invest in the economy, so you're growing the pie. It's kind of the old Laffer curve, where you cut taxes and revenue goes up, and as the economy expands, and if we get to an average of 4 or 5% growth over, a 2-year period of time, they have an estimate of how many hundreds of billions of dollars in new revenue that's going to add to bring the debt down. Having said that, you're right, Matt. Nobody seems to have any appetite for cutting spending. In fact, the president yesterday comes out and says, I'm going to put a freeze on federal workers' pay, and everybody goes crazy. So The problem in this town, which I'm in, which is a very corrupt place, by the way, Matt, if you ever get up here in the U.S. Senate, you're going to find out how corrupt it is. Nobody wants to cut spending. All they want to do is increase it. So
yeah, there's little appetite in Washington, right? People say, Washington is broken. Well, that's not true. Washington works just fine for those who work and live in Washington, of which I do. And I'm an Alexandria resident. Have been a Virginian my entire life, and been in politics and consulting with many political candidates, PACs, C4, C3 organizations, all of which have taken a very limited government role and a big personal freedom role. And unfortunately, for groups like the Heritage Foundation, who set up shop here 50 years ago to limit government, it hasn't been limited. Under Ronald Reagan, it wasn't limited. What happens is exactly what happened 10 years ago this weekend. John, you'll remember, people were packing up. It's Labor Day weekend. They're going to Virginia Beach. They're going to the Outer Banks. All is great. But 3 weeks later, end of September 2008, John McCain, in the middle of a presidential race, suspends his campaign to come back to Washington to deal with one of the threats that nearly undid lots of people's, financial security for multiple years. That is, I'm talking about the Great Recession. We, have always been a city shining, a shining city on a hill. But today I believe we're a country sitting on a sinkhole. And every single economist, John, and I'm going to push back on the idea that we can grow our way out of it, are telling us, left, middle, and right, it's impossible. CBO is saying it's impossible to grow our way out of this right now, unless we have, you're talking about a 4 or 5% growth rate. Even at that rate, I'm not seeing how you turn the ship around, the ship of state around. Now, that would be good, be very good, sure. But we've got to have a reckoning with entitlement spending. Look, I talk about a $21 trillion debt. When you throw in unfunded liabilities, entitlement spending that we're not entitled to, by the way, we talk about entitlements, which represent $2 trillion of the federal debt, half of it, a little over half. When you throw that unfunded liability in that equation, we're at $120 trillion in liabilities. That is completely unsustainable. It threatens the very future of the Republic, as I mentioned, from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who say that that's a bigger threat than Iran, North Korea, and ISIS. I mean, for goodness sake, these are men who are, combat men who've seen a lot of very difficult things in their lives, saying, hey, you know what? This is actually more difficult than the stuff we've seen on the battlefield.
Okay, we're with Matt Waters, just so we can re-intro here for those that just joined us. We're with Matt Waters. He's the Libertarian candidate for U.S. Senate in Virginia. This will be decided November 6th. Other two candidates in the race, the overwhelming favorite to win, Tim Kaine, barring some kind of a cosmic event. Kaine is going to get reelected handily. Corey Stewart is the Republican in it, and it's a matter of does he get beat by 15 or 25. And then the Libertarian candidate who is with us now, Matt Waters, who was trying to bring some attention here to the budget. Well, Matt, a lot of people look at this and they say, okay, Matt, well, I get it. I get the words and whatever. But, you mentioned this financial crisis, and basically here's what happened. We got screwed. We lost our house. We lost our car. We got repoed. We lost our job. We were out in the street. We lost our savings. We lost our 401k. We had to work 2 and 3 jobs. And see, the people that caused it, Matt, you know what happened to them? See, they got $1 trillion bailout from the U.S. government. So they got golden parachutes, and they made more money. And then here's what they did, Matt. They took our taxpayer money, that $1 trillion, and, of course, nobody got prosecuted for cheating or the whole scandal that went down. And what they did is they took that money, and as soon as the coast was clear and the government wired them your tax dollars of $1 trillion, they went out, and the big banks in lower Manhattan that basically could care less about any working person in this country, and they went out and they purchased up all the little community banks so then they could have more of a monopoly and raise rates and screw you again. So your own money went to them so you could get screwed a second time. And so this is what working people see. And they're like, I'm in a system where I don't have a shot. And you got the business schools now, Matt, go around from Harvard to Wharton, a whole bunch of them, and they teach, Carnegie Mellon, all of them, they teach, hey, business is about ownership and stockholder value. Workers are just a commodity. They can be outsourced, whatever. It's about ownership. It's about building wealth for stakeholders, for owners. So average people look at the debt and they're like, you know what? The government, they'll bail it out. Somebody's going to bail it out because I'm going to get screwed again anyway. I mean, that's...
Yeah, no, certainly there's those I see it as 3 responses to the debt. There's the Democrat response, which is they don't even mention it. They don't even acknowledge it exists. Although I'll give a shout out to Democrat Bobby Scott. I think he mentioned the words balanced and budget in the same sentence in the last few months, which I was shocked at. I think it's probably the first time since Kennedy I heard a Democrat say that. But of course, the Republicans have always been, quote unquote, for a balanced budget amendment, and they did that under Gingrich and the House Republicans back in the day, and that did not come to pass, of course. But so their response was to acknowledge it and let's tackle it. But as of late, they said under Trump, "Hey, no, debt's good. This is kind of debt. This is Trump's kind of MO is debt's good. Let's use it to our advantage and work with debt." And so they've kind of jettisoned it. And then there's kind of us, the lowly third party, the Libertarian Party that says, "Hey, hold on a second. Debt threatens the future of the Republic. It's going to swallow us up." Every economist, left, middle, and right, says that they don't agree on maybe when or how, but they all agree on it's going to happen. So yeah, I mean that's part of it. That's part of the issue. Now, getting back to so why does it matter to the American people, and spending matter to the American people, and Virginians in particular? I would love to see transparency in Washington, and that's a very hard thing to do, John, as you well know. Auditing the Pentagon, from auditing the Fed, et cetera, very, very hard to do to get transparency. One of my other positions on this, and the debt is tied to freedom, right? Because money equals freedom. The less money you and I have, John, the more money Washington has, the less freedom we have. So, So take my plan to end the personal federal income tax. That's a very libertarian position. It's libertarianism 101. We believe, we voted in our platform, that taxation is theft. And that's one of the reasons why I'm a libertarian. I firmly believe that. Let's start with that position. If you eliminate the personal federal income tax, the average taxpayer will receive a $12,000 pay raise, right? And a working mom and dad, that's $25,000 pay raise roughly. Now, if you can start to entertain that kind of thinking, the other side of the equation, that hey, cutting spending, cutting the farm bill, cutting WIC, putting work requirements in WIC and that sort of thing, cutting the sex ed study of Salomon in South Carolina versus a $12,000 pay raise. Americans will think differently about it. And this also gets to, the automatic withholding of taxes in the paycheck. If you do a simple thing like end that, where Americans have to pay their taxes out of their paycheck, write a check to Washington, just like they write a check to Verizon or Comcast or whomever else they have for internet service or phone service, you'll see a magnificent change in the feelings of Americans towards Washington and the ownership we have over this government. We do own it. And by the way, you mentioned in the beginning of the show, I'm a first-time candidate. I've never run for office before, And as Bill Buckley famously said, years ago, I'd rather be governed by the first 435 people I find in the white pages. For those younger viewers, the white pages were those phone directory that had names and addresses in it, right, with their phone number. And he said, I'd rather be governed by those folks than the folks in Washington. So I hope that I'm probably more in line with one of those folks than I am a Washingtonian.
Matt, I appreciate what you're doing and bringing attention to this issue. And also, you've given an outlet to people. There are people I know, and I'm not going to get into this because I get 80 million texts, and it's Friday, and I just don't feel like it, dealing with it.
I know where you're going, John.
I am the Godzilla of truth in America. And so you give people that just cannot vote for Corey Stewart, but don't like Tim Kaine's policies, you give them an outlet. And that's really a value you bring to this race, because I've got a lot of people that have told me, John, I cannot under any circumstances vote for Corey Stewart. I just can't do it. Now, I don't want to get get fights with people about why and I should support him and all that. I'm going to tell my listeners I've had at least 50 Republicans tell me not John Fredericks, the person, I cannot vote for Corey Stewart for U.S. Senate. So you give them an outlet if they don't like Kaine's policies. And so,
as Ronald Reagan famously said, behind every good Republican stands a libertarian. He gave an interview to Reason magazine in the mid-'70s. That's where he said that. And I'd like to say, in front of every Republican stands a good libertarian. And I hope that's the way, instead of leading from behind, which is what we've done for a number of years, let's lead from the front. And I think people are hungry for a third party beyond, as you mentioned, party politics in the state of Virginia. 50% of the people don't vote, John, and that. Why is that? I mean, there's been no number of studies on that. Is it apathy, or is it appetite? Right? There's just no appetite for Republicans and Democrats who, as George Wallace said,
the reason
back in
people
68,
don't vote, forget that. That's the elitist Harvard view. 50% of the people don't vote because they think that doesn't matter, because they're going to get screwed by the government no matter what they do. And if you look at the financial crisis, that philosophy bore out, right? So it's like, why should I even spend 15 minutes voting? It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I'm not part of the ownership class. I'm not part of the elite. I don't make any decisions. I'm just a working person. And at the end of the day, I'm expendable and I'll get screwed. So why bother? Now, that changed a little bit in 2016 because Trump got people out that never voted before, had been absent, and they knew something was the matter, and they saw him as the disruptor and agent of change. Matt, I got to go. Website, what is it?
Yeah, MattWaters.com. You can find out all of our priorities there, John. We'd love to have people come on board, take a look at us. Give us a look here in Virginia, and don't dismiss us just because we're a third party. But
I got to go. MattWaters.com.